Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide. A reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that Walt Disney was able to transform 160 acres of orange groves into a magical kingdom that welcomed more than 1 million visitors in just 7 weeks after opening? Learn how traffic stretched for 7 miles into a parking lot, overflowing with thousands of eager visitors rushing through the gates. Discover how fresh asphalt softened in the 100-degree heat while workers were still planting trees and painting buildings as long lines formed around rides and restaurants, while nearly 70 million viewers watched Disneyland's grand opening live on TV from their homes.
Picture this. You're standing outside in the sweltering heat. And it is well over 100 degrees. You've just spent hours stuck in a miserable, gridlocked 7-mile traffic jam just to get to this exact spot.
Sounds awful.
Right. And you finally make it out of your car, but the conditions are so rough that the fresh asphalt beneath your feet is literally melting in the sun.
Just liquid.
Literally liquid. People's shoes are sinking into the ground. You can smell fresh paint everywhere just wafting through the heavy summer air. People are packed shoulder to shoulder. Food service is crawling to a halt. The plumbing is failing, and the walkways are completely choked. Where are you?
Well, you are at the happiest place on earth.
Exactly. You are at Disneyland. Today's deep dive is exploring the factual, documented history of Disneyland's opening days in July of 1955.
Yeah.
We are unpacking the mechanics of how a 160-acre orange grove, the quiet town of Anaheim, California, transformed into a $17 million cultural phenomenon.
Which is just a staggering amount of money for the time.
It really is. A phenomenon that eventually outpaced America's greatest national parks in attendance. Okay, let's unpack this, because the reality of opening day is completely wild compared to the polished Disney we know today. I mean, have you ever wondered what it actually took to make a literal dream a reality?
And doing so required an unprecedented compression of, time, labor, and capital. It is basically a masterclass in extreme project management, for better or worse.
I want to start right there with the timeline, because Walt Disney spent 2 full decades planning this concept.
Right, 20 years.
20 years of sketches, concepts, financing struggles, just endless revisions. But the actual physical execution, transforming a vast citrus farm into a fully operational theme park, that took exactly 1 year.
Which is an absurd timeline when you look at the mechanics of what they were actually doing on the ground. I mean, they weren't just putting up a few roller coasters in a parking lot. They had to physically uproot over 12,000 deeply entrenched orange and walnut trees.
Wait, 12,000 trees?
Over 12,000. And they had to drastically regrade the topography of 160 acres of flat farmland.
Wow.
Yeah, they had to create artificial rivers, hills, berms. They built 5 completely distinct biomes.
It's like from a futuristic spaceport to a 19th century frontier town.
Exactly, along with 20 different attractions, all from scratch in 12 months.
I struggle to wrap my head around that. When you look at that compression of time, 20 years of dreaming versus just 1 year of building, how does that set up the high-stakes environment for opening day? Because it's the equivalent of building a small, hyper-detailed, fully functioning city in 12 months.
It really is. And to answer your question, the timeline wasn't dictated by the construction schedule.
Oh, really?
No, it was dictated by the financing. To get the $17 million required to build the park, Walt Disney had to make a massive deal with the ABC television network.
Ah, of course. Follow the money.
Always. ABC provided crucial funding and guaranteed loans, but in exchange, Disney had to produce a weekly television show. And the park absolutely had to be ready for a massive live broadcast in July of 1955.
So they were locked in.
The date was locked by a network television contract. They simply did not have the runway to delay. This extreme pressure cooker of a timeline directly explains why workmen were literally still planting trees and painting certain areas as the first guests walked in.
That is just so stressful.
It was. The physical reality was struggling to catch up with the 2-decade vision. When you try to manifest 20 years of relentless perfectionism into the physical world in just 365 days, the infrastructure is going to buckle.
And that pressure cooker completely exploded on Sunday, July 17th, 1955.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, this was supposed to be the International Press Preview Day. It wasn't even open to the general public yet, right?
Right. It was intended to be a highly curated environment, a controlled test run, basically.
But the control completely evaporated. I mean, they're planned for a strict limit of 6,000 invited guests. They invited celebrities, studio workers, construction crew families, the press, company officials.
And even assuming everyone brought a guest, they planned for maybe 15,000 people maximum.
But more than 28,000 people flooded the park that day.
Yeah, this is where we have to look at the mechanics of the failure. Because it wasn't just one thing going wrong. It was a cascading effect of logistical blind spots. First, you had the counterfeit tickets.
Right, I read about this. People were just faking them.
Oh, mass producing them. The concept of this park was generating so much hype that people were literally using ladders to climb the fences, and counterfeiters had just flooded the area with fake invitations.
But didn't they have a system to clear the park out? I thought they issued 2 sets of tickets, like a morning group and an afternoon group.
They did, yeah, and that highlights their lack of behavioral data at the time. The idea was that the morning crowd would enjoy the park for a few hours, get tired, and leave.
Right, making room.
Exactly, clearing the way for the afternoon ticket holders. But they failed to account for the psychology of the environment they had created. Nobody had ever seen anything like this. The morning crowd was entirely captivated. They simply refused to leave.
I mean, if I managed to get into the most anticipated event of the decade, I wouldn't leave either.
No one would.
But if the park is double its maximum capacity, how did the physical infrastructure not completely collapse? We already mentioned the melting asphalt. Why was the ground literally liquid?
Because of a local plumber strike leading up to the opening.
Wait, a strike?
Yeah, the construction managers were forced to make a brutal choice. They only had enough time and manpower to either finish the plumbing for the bathrooms or cure the asphalt on the walkways.
Oh, no.
And Walt Disney famously chose the bathrooms, stating that people could buy Pepsi-Cola, but they couldn't pee in the street.
I mean, he's not wrong.
He's not. So the asphalt was poured incredibly late, and in that over 100-degree California sun, it never properly set. Women's high heels were literally getting cemented into the Main Street pavement.
That is a nightmare scenario. I want the listener to just imagine this for a second. Imagine throwing an exclusive dinner party for 10 people and 50 show up, but you only have food for 10 and your floor is melting.
It's a disaster.
How did they not just shut the whole thing down? Our sources highlight the resilience of Walt Disney and his staff, but honestly, why didn't he just close the gates?
Well, because of that ABC television contract. The park wasn't just hosting a party, it was serving as a giant television studio. They couldn't stop. The staff worked frantically on the ground to resolve issues in real time.
Right.
And because of all the delays and problems, they immediately pivoted and ended up inviting the press back for a second day to experience the true wonder of the park without the crowds.
Okay, that makes sense. Because the rest of the country was experiencing this opening in a completely different, highly curated way.
Exactly. This is where the narrative splits between the chaotic physical reality on the ground and the perceived reality being beamed into living rooms.
Right, the broadcast. Dateline Disneyland. It aired on the ABC television network from 7:30 to 9:00 p.m. Eastern Time.
And it was the largest and most complex live broadcast at the time. The technical achievement of this cannot be overstated.
Well, and think about the era, right? Live television usually happened in tightly controlled indoor studios.
Yes.
Broadcasting a live, fluid event across 160 acres required routing miles and miles of heavy coaxial cable all over the park.
You had huge, cumbersome 1950s cameras baking in the sun, tubes blowing out from the heat. Camera operators were literally stepping over puddles of wet paint and dodging 28,000 sweaty, angry guests just to get their shots. And they were routing all these different live feeds back to a central control truck to be edited on the fly.
And the audience size was staggering. An estimated 70 million people watched this on their black and white TVs.
70 million.
To put that into perspective for you listening, this wasn't just a ribbon cutting. 70 million viewers in 1955 was a massive chunk of the U.S. population. It was a nationwide cultural event, almost like a 1950s Super Bowl of entertainment.
It really was.
And it was hosted by some huge names, Ronald Reagan, Bob Cummings, and Art Linkletter. And they were showing off attendees like they had Jerry Lewis, Debbie Reynolds, Sammy Davis Jr., and Frank Sinatra.
Which was a brilliant piece of strategic misdirection. The broadcast didn't focus on the plumbing failures or the gridlock traffic.
Obviously not.
Right. It focused on the glamour. It was a masterclass in establishing a cultural narrative. And the centerpiece of that narrative was Walt Disney's dedication speech.
Yes, the dedication speech. He stood up and said, "To all that come to this happy place, welcome. Disneyland is dedicated to the ideals, the dreams, and the hard facts that have created America."
Notice that phrase right there. The hard facts that have created America.
Yeah, that has always struck me as an odd choice of words. Why mention hard facts in a place that is literally built on fairy tales and talking mice?
Because Disney wasn't trying to build a carnival. Carnivals at the time were seen as cheap, transient, and purely escapist. By mentioning hard facts to 70 million people simultaneously, he was explicitly grounding his creation in American reality.
That's interesting.
He was framing the park as a monument to American innovation, industry, and nostalgia. By broadcasting this to 70 million people, Disney instantly embedded his orange grove into the American identity.
It legitimized the fantasy. It made it okay for adults to care about it.
Exactly.
So you have a chaotic melting press day, followed by a masterful 90-minute TV broadcast. What happens when the gates actually open to the general public the very next morning? Because I imagine the word on the street locally was pretty bad.
You would logically expect the bad local press, the traffic jams, and the sheet to keep the public away on Monday.
But it didn't.
Not at all.
The official opening for the general public was Monday, July 18th, 1955 at 10 a.m. But people started lining up outside the park at 2 a.m.
They waited in the dark for 8 hours.
And when those doors finally opened, the public just rushed in.
And the first official guest to enter was a 22-year-old college student from Long Beach named David McPherson. He actually bought ticket number 2.
Wait, who had ticket number 1?
Ticket number 1 was held by Walt's brother and business partner, Roy Disney, which makes sense since he secured the financing.
Right, fair enough. And McPherson actually received a lifetime pass for being ticket number 2.
Which is a pretty good deal for a college student.
Not bad at all. But here's where it gets really interesting for you listening. The most revealing metric isn't just that first day. The opening day problems didn't dissuade anyone. In just 7 weeks, attendance passed 1 million visitors.
1 million.
Disneyland quickly surpassed the Grand Canyon and Yellowstone National Park in popularity. Over 1 million people in 7 weeks, beating the Grand Canyon. A literal, natural wonder of the world was being out-attended by a 1-year-old theme park.
It is a crazy statistic.
How does that happen?
Well, it proves that the power of the vision overcame the friction of reality. The public didn't care about the initial hiccups, the fresh paint or the heat, because the core product, the realization of a dream, was completely unprecedented.
It taps into something fundamental, doesn't it?
It does. To understand why it surpassed natural wonders in popularity, we have to look at how humans interact with their environment.
Okay.
The Grand Canyon is raw, indifferent nature. It is breathtaking, yes, but it doesn't care about you. It has no narrative arc. Disneyland, however, is a curated canvas. We are a storytelling species, and Disneyland offered an immersive environment where people could physically walk into a narrative.
So why did it resonate so deeply?
Yeah.
Our sources actually dive into the psychology of this, and they draw a fascinating through line to explain it. They look at the concept of yearning, the architecture of a wish.
It's a profound way to diagnose what makes the park work so well.
They start by looking at Walt Disney's movie Pinocchio, specifically the iconic song When You Wish Upon a Star. That song isn't just a catchy tune. It expresses our deep, almost desperate desire for wishes to come true.
It is essentially the secular anthem of the human condition. We are creatures constantly looking toward the future, wishing for something greater, something more magical or more meaningful than our current reality.
Yeah.
But what makes the research we are reviewing so compelling is that it doesn't just stop at pop culture. It compares this secular concept of wishing to ancient texts.
Yes, the jump to ancient scripture completely caught me off guard at first. So what does this all mean? We're jumping from a theme park in Anaheim to ancient scripture. The sources draw a surprising parallel to the Book of Mormon, specifically a verse from Alma, chapter 29, verse 1.
Yeah, let's look at that.
In this text, Alma is expressing this profound, overwhelming internal yearning. He says, "Oh, that I were an angel and could have the wish of mine heart, that I might go forth and speak with the trump of God."
When you put those two concepts in the same room, a 1940s animated song about a wooden puppet wishing to be real, and an ancient scriptural passage about a spiritual leader wishing to share a divine message with the voice of an angel, the universal mechanism becomes obvious.
Right.
Whether it's a child looking up at the night sky or a spiritual figure seeking divine intervention, humanity is driven by deep internal hopes.
So the through line here is that Disneyland commercialized a fundamental human longing, the wish of your heart.
That is exactly the mechanism of its success. Disneyland positioned itself as the physical destination where that universal abstract feeling of wishing is made tangible. When those people were lining up at Tuasol on July 18th, they weren't just eager to ride a carousel, they were answering a deeply ingrained call. The park was meticulously designed to be a sanctuary where the harsh realities of the world are suspended and the purity of a human wish is celebrated as real.
It reframes the entire story. Today, over 750 million people have visited Disneyland.
750 million.
And the aerial view is vastly different today, obviously. You have massive additions like Star Wars and California Adventure, plus entire parks globally. Florida, Paris, Tokyo, Shanghai, Hong Kong.
It's a global empire now.
It really is.
Yeah.
In one sweltering summer weekend, Walt Disney took a 160-acre citrus farm, weathered a disastrous, overcrowded 28,000-person preview day where everything on the ground seemed to fail. He managed to captivate 70 million television viewers and ultimately built an empire that has now welcomed hundreds of millions of people.
All because they tapped into the very universal concept of the wish of the heart.
Exactly.
It really forces us to evaluate what physical spaces mean to a culture. Because, Walt Disney dedicated the park to the ideals, the dreams, and the hard facts that have created America.
Right.
But as times change and the hard facts of our world evolve, it leaves us with a really fascinating question to mull over. What will the wishes of our hearts look like in another 70 years?
Oh, wow.
If our deepest, most fundamental dreams change, will the physical spaces we build to celebrate them have to change entirely too?
That is a brilliant thought to chew on. The next time you find yourself stuck in a traffic jam in the summer heat or smelling fresh asphalt, consider that the things we physically build are ultimately just reflections of the abstract things we wish for. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the chaotic, brilliant dawn of Disneyland. Keep wondering, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this day in His story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in His story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.